Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Moore. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Welcome to A Thousand Generations, presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Now, many of you may recognize that I have named my Thursday episodes from the line which Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Luke Skywalker. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, before the Dark Times, before the Empire. It's that I want to talk about today. The Old Republic. Now, I'll give you a brief recap of the history. 1,000 years before the Star Wars movies, the Sith, and there were many of them, destroyed each other. We don't really know exactly if the Jedi were involved in the destruction of the Sith, but regardless, the Sith destroyed each other. The great Sith civilizations and empires destroyed each other, victims of their own greed and hubris. One Sith survived. His name was Darth Bane. Darth Bane created the rule of two, which is that there would only ever be two Sith, a master and an apprentice, until such time that they could take over the galaxy again. So, in a nutshell, that's the history of the Sith that we know about. Before 1,000 years before the movies, there's a lot that we do not know about the history of the Sith. Ten years ago, Lucasfilm decided to reset the canon of Star Wars. What is the canon? Well, canon is the official story. In the 80s, 90s, 2000s, there were a lot of books and comics and video games and many, many other things that came out. But in order to begin this new era of storytelling, Lucasfilm needed to reboot. So in April of 2014, it was declared that the six Star Wars movies and the Clone Wars series were the only things that were the official story of Star Wars, and that everything created after that date would also be the official story. This is what is the new canon. The older material was declared Star Wars Legends. And Lucasfilm maintains that they can borrow from Legends as they see fit for their stories. And this they have done many times. Ahsoka Tano says there's always a bit of truth in Legends. So calling the old material Legends was a good idea. Because it may be true and may not be true, just like legends in real life. Okay, so I just wanted to share that I would be more than excited to get more canon storytelling about the ancient days of the Sith and the Jedi. Now, the legends told a lot of stories about the ancient time of the Jedi. I would be interested in seeing it in canon, whether it be in books and comics, whether it be on film, or in live action series, or even animated series. I would love to see it. Now, if you are interested, the 90s comics of Tales of the Jedi told a long-running story about the ancient Jedi and Sith. If you're interested in that, I would recommend looking it up. Tales of the Jedi. Now, as far as canon goes, we have not been given a whole lot. It's been made mention in the movies and the shows. The books and comics have made slight references to it. But the references come from the reference books, like the visual dictionaries and other books like that. And those are canon, but they're very, very loosely canon. Um, it is true that in the modern canon there have been contradictions. Usually what happens is there will be a book or a comic written many years ago, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. The creators of a new piece of Star Wars story need to create something, and it slightly contradicts what was written in those books and comics. It's usually the books and comics that get contradicted. It doesn't bother me that much because I think that there needs to be the freedom to tell the story. Also, if something was written 7 years ago, it's before they really knew where they were going with the story or the new piece of storytelling. For example, in the comic Kanan the Last Padawan, Order 66 occurs with Kanan Jarrus as a young Padawan, but the Bad Batch is not involved. Jump to 2 years ago. We see that same story play out in an animated series, except this time the Bad Batch is involved. But I guess the point for me is the movies and the shows are for me like that's canon. The books and comics are canon, but just for me, I don't necessarily consider them as airtight or unviolatable. Just because the story's always changing. But that's just how I feel. I'm not saying you have to feel that way. But to get back to the main point, I would love to see storytelling of the old Republic, of armies of Jedi fighting armies of Sith. We've gotten hints throughout the canon that the Sith once ruled the galaxy. But there had been Sith empires that have risen and fallen, and the Jedi have fought them for millennia. I would love to see some of those stories played out in canon. Also, we know that the Mandalorians fought great wars against the Jedi in the ancient past. The reason Mandalorians have all those neat gadgets like rocket packs and grappling hooks and Beskar, which is lightsaber resistant, all the little neat tools that the Mandalorians have is because those things were originally designed to fight the Jedi. Because the Mandalorians, generally speaking, were not trained in the ways of the Force, they needed a way to counter the Jedi. Thus, all their neat gadgets. And also, by the way, there is a mural, or I don't know whether it's a mural or a bas relief, that can be seen in the Clone Wars episodes of Mandalorians fighting Jedi. Now, we do know from Star Wars Rebels that there was one Mandalorian who did become a Jedi. His name was Tar Vizsla, and he's the guy who built the Darksaber. It'd be interesting to get his story told in some form. Now, those of you who are familiar with Grand Admiral Thrawn, Mr. Blueskin himself, his people are called the Chiss. They once were involved in the ancient Sith wars with the Jedi. We don't know what side they were on, but we know that they were involved. Which is interesting because they're a very isolationist people. They're very isolated. They don't really venture out into the galaxy very much. It's a long story, but basically the area of space that they live in is difficult to navigate, which is why they need force-sensitive navigators. If you're interested in that, I would recommend reading some of the Thrawn novels that have come out in the last few years by Timothy Zahn. So we don't know what side the Chiss were on in those wars, but that would be an interesting part of the story as well. According to some of the material, the Jedi Temple itself was built over an ancient Sith shrine on Coruscant. That Sith shrine is leftovers from when the Sith Empire ruled Coruscant. And apparently there had been multiple Sith empires. I'd be interested to see the Jedi fighting the Sith in these ancient wars. Star Wars Legends has already told a lot of stories in this particular time. And I wonder if maybe the reason we haven't gotten any solid Old Republic storytelling in canon is maybe Lucasfilm knows how much people love the old legends of the Old Republic and don't want to step on the toes of those stories, at least not yet. Regardless, I'd be fascinated to see it. The Sith were founded by a Jedi Knight who went rogue at some point in history. The current timeline books say about 5,000 years before the movies, but that is adjustable because the reference books are written with the knowledge that we have now, but that could change in the future. So I'd be interested to see who was this Jedi who fell to the dark side. Um, so there's a lot of storytelling that can be done with this old Republic, the ancient Sith Wars, the Mandalorians, the Chiss, all these other groups. I know that we supposedly are getting a Dawn of the Jedi movie soon, which will explore kind of the beginnings of the Jedi. Maybe once that story is told, they can finally start filling in the rest of the timeline and getting into many, many stories in the Old Republic. Now, the High Republic novels, which is the publishing initiative going on right now, takes place about 200 years before the movies. So, not the ancient time of the Jedi and Sith. In fact, the Sith have yet to show up in the High Republic novels. The Sith are in hiding at that point, with the rule of two going on, so I wonder what's going on there. That's another story that could be told, but as far as the Old Republic, the High Republic books and comics have been very successful. Very successful. I think very successful. Than Lucasfilm imagined they would be, I think. I think they could do a same kind of publishing initiative with the Old Republic. Books, comics, and whatnot to tell a large story taking place at some specific time in the Old Republic. A time when there were armies of Jedi fighting armies of Sith. Crossing my fingers that that will be represented visually at some point. Whether it be in a series or a game or even a movie to see armies of lightsaber users, Force wielders, Sith and Jedi going at each other. That's something we have not seen yet in Star Wars, and I cannot wait until the day that that happens. So the sky's the limit as far as the future is concerned. But I just wanted to express to you my excitement for when they finally sit down and decide to tell stories in the Old Republic, because we have gotten a lot of hints in the canon about what happened all those thousands of years ago. To see it or read it is what I'm looking forward to. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in the Old Republic era? The era of armies of Sith and Jedi empires and kingdoms of Sith fighting the Republic? Let me know if that interests you. My name is Brennan Miller. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Thank you for tuning in to 1,000 Generations, presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.